He's not fighting for a fame. We all know what is happening in this country because I live, like you know, I was a political prisoner back in Poland. I came to Canada to build my life in a free country. And I could have chosen any country in the world at that time. And I chose Canada because I've heard that this is a country that there is freedom.
Sunday night, I was at a protest at the Edmonton Remand Center, but it was more than a protest. It was a prayer vigil for Pastor Artur Pawlowski, who at the time had been imprisoned for approaching 50 days for the crime of offering a supportive sermon to truckers who were blockading the Coutts border crossing with the United States to demand an end to remaining lockdown restrictions. Now, for those of you who have been following along, you know Art has had plenty of run-ins with the law and the Alberta government because of his resistance to COVID restrictions that he say would violate the practice of his faith, which includes his desire and need to feed the homeless, but also his desire to protect his church from government authorities when they want to barge in and do inspections. You can see all of our coverage of Pastor Art and support his ongoing legal battle with the Alberta government for free speech and freedom of religion at saveartur.com. And all your donations there qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the Democracy Fund. But while I was at the protest, I ran into a lady that I met roughly a year ago. I actually met her at another protest for yet another imprisoned pastor here in Alberta. That pastor's name is James Coates, and he was locked up for 35 days in the same jail as Pastor Art for refusing to force COVID lockdown restrictions on his church and his congregation. Now, when I met this lady, the province had just seized the Grace Life Church property because the government could not bring the congregation into compliance, even though the government had imprisoned Pastor James Coates. That lady that I met, her name is Regina Gorman. She's a Polish immigrant to Canada who explained to me that at the time she had been a political prisoner in Soviet-controlled Poland, and she felt the need to protest things that she saw unfolding in Canada that she had already experienced in Soviet-controlled Poland. Take a listen to her from back then.
I came as a political refugee to Canada back in 1986. I got out of jail because I was involved in the solidarity movement when we stood up to the communist government. And after leaving jail, I was like a young girl those days. And I had no future in Poland because I was being persecuted by the government. And at that point, I've decided to seek refuge in another country as a political prisoner. So I had some other options, other countries, but I chose Canada because I've heard this is the country that there is freedom. And I came here, I built my life, I raised my children, I succeeded, and right now it's like reliving my history and what I'm seeing, what's happening here, how we are being persecuted, the people who are standing up and trying to find other sources of information.
Well, fast forward a year, and I run into Regina at the Remand Center protest for another imprisoned pastor. She told me that a year ago she found Pastor Art a little bit over the top in his rhetoric when he referred to public health authorities as Nazis. Remember this?
Out! Out of this property, you Nazis! Out! Out! Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed! Out!
But Regina told me she had changed her mind now about Art's rhetoric. But more than that, she told me a terrible story of how a workplace vaccine mandate had triggered her PTSD from her time spent in a Soviet prison. The government coercion, using her employer as a tool to coerce, had damaged her mental health. But enough from me. Let's hear this horrible story from Regina.
Remember, we met the first time at Grace Life. Yeah. And actually at that day, I don't know if you recall, but I was saying something about Pastor Artur, and I was saying, well, he's a little radical when he calls them Nazis and Gestapos. And once things progressed, actually, I will take it back. I've known Pastor Artur for many years, like for last over 20 years. As you know, I'm Polish. And that was a time when his son was born, Nathaniel. There was a movie done about it, and I think everyone should see that movie. Then they will know why Artur is fighting. He's not fighting for a fame. We all know what is happening in this country because I live, like you know, I was a political prisoner back in Poland. I came to Canada to build my life in a free country. And I could have chosen any country in the world at that time, and I chose Canada because I've heard that this is a country that there is freedom. We built our lives, and so did Artur. And when I'm watching those vigils in Calgary at Remand Center, and his son Nathaniel taking over, speaking for his son, what a beautiful boy. I wish my sons were like him. I wish they understood what we had sacrificed and why we came to this country, what's happening, what had happened to me personally. I worked for last 9 years for CNRL. That's the company, the oil company, the only oil company that imposed, that mandated those vaccines. I've been working from home for last couple of years as a non-essential employee because I've been flying back and forth to Horizon site. What happened to me was when at the beginning our CEO, he said there will be a choice, and then they actually mandated the vaccine. So what I've done, I asked for religious exemption, and it was actually Pastor Rodney who gave me the letter. So that was the only pastor that I went around that actually, and that was the church that I attended. So I have given that request for religious exemption. I've been waiting for almost 2 months. And then I found out that all the employees who applied for religious exemption, they got the same letter. And that letter was very diminishing because it was implied in that letter that the supporting documentation has been taken off internet or paid for, or your name was actually copied and pasted. So I was indirectly accused of forging the supporting documentation. So for me, it was very hard. I came back, everything started coming back. All this persecution that I went through in Poland, I spent 13 months in jail. Everything started coming back. It's actually worse than what was happening in communism. In communism, I had the opportunity to stand in court and actually defend myself. And here, this company, CNRL, what they've done to me, they wouldn't, when I offered that I can provide you the documentation for the authenticity of my supporting documentation, they said no. I wasn't even allowed to prove that I'm not lying, that actually this is. So what I've done, as of November 23rd, we were told that either you take the vaccine by December 21st or you will be suspended. And actually that's what I couldn't handle this pressure. I've been working for this company for almost 9 years, never took one sick day. And it came to a point where I couldn't handle it anymore mentally, because I started suffering anxiety and depression. And it came to a point where I couldn't be at work. I went to the doctor. No doctor wanted to actually help me. Finally, I found one, and the doctor sent me on medical leave. CNRL wouldn't even pay me for a sick leave. They denied me the short-term disability, which was a part of my compensation package. And then it came to a point where I applied. It was actually taken a long time. It's been now almost over 3 months where I never got paid. I've never been on EI. And now the EI is like, we're not eligible for it. I'm not eligible for short term, and I'm not eligible for WCB, although I need help, because what I have been diagnosed with, it's like a delayed PTSD after what happened to me. Now nobody will help me in this government. So what's happening with Artur now, it's actually happening to all of us. And here we're being told that, oh yes, like all these restrictions have been removed, which is a total lie, because we're not allowed to travel. I can't even go and visit home anymore. I'm not allowed to get on the plane. I became a prisoner in this country without any rights. And no, I don't qualify even like for this, what they call that lockdown benefits. I'm not qualified for EI, not help whatsoever. If it wasn't for my savings, I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. And this is the country I've worked for almost 40 years and contributed to this country, right? And this is that's what they're saying, that there is all restrictions are taken. No, they're not, because what's happening with CNRL, they said that you can come back to work. And I say, how can I back to work? I need help. I need treatment. I need a psychological help to get over all this anxiety and stress they put me through. And this happened directly because of the coercion and pushing me through to get this vaccine. And they won't help. And they said, as of the 4th of April, if I don't come to work, they say that will mean that I abandoned my job when I'm sick and I need actually help. And CNRL wouldn't help me. Nobody helps me. And this is the situation we're in. And here people are saying, well, like, what's your problem? Why do you keep on having your protests if you got everything back, right? You got, like, all the restrictions have been removed. No, because for the new employees, I'm sorry, I don't have a cleaner. For the new employees, CNRL mandates the vaccines. So they say, well, like, we're welcome to come back. No, they just want to bring us back so they can humiliate us more. Right? And this is the situation. And as for Pastor Artur, we all know all these years he's been warning Canada about it. And he was being persecuted. Why? Just because he's been trying to expose this evil when we still had a chance.
Regina came to Canada for freedom, to be a productive, valuable member of our society, to give back, to help Canada grow, and to worship and live her life as she sees fit, free of government coercion. But in 2 years, the government took all that away from her and triggered a mental health crisis caused by PTSD when the memories of government coercion came flooding back to pummel her emotionally. She was a political prisoner, and Canada promised her freedom. Then the government snatched it all away. Then her employer coerced her, triggered her PTSD through their actions, and then they abandoned her. I wanted to show you this because, well, for me, it was an example of how our stories and our coverage can change minds. But more important than that, Regina has lived under state control, and she lived under freedom. And she sees the state control coming back. And we would do well to listen to people like her. Instead, she's been damaged and discarded. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. I've met Regina twice now at 2 different protests for 2 different imprisoned Alberta pastors. If you'd like to help us support Pastor Artur Pawlowski in his battle for religious freedom and for free speech against the control of the state, please visit saveartur.com, and all your donations there qualify for a charitable tax receipt through a very important partnership with the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund.